Now, the mining and extractive sector have contributed and continues to contribute a significant share of Africa's exports, revenue and GDP annually. In 2019, minerals and fossil fuels accounted for over a third of exports from at least 60% of African countries, reinforcing the mining and natural resources sector as critical economic growth and development drivers on the continent. Following a disruptive year in 2020 that saw gold prices skyrocket, Africa has begun to meet its expansive potential by ascribing more relevance to prospective jurisdictions such as West Africa throughout the continent. Now, to get into a robust discussion around this with me is Emiko, founder, Iyahen Smith Refinery in Sanu, which is a digital product for the gold and silver market. The Iyahen Smith Group of companies are mining and mineral trading firms. I also have here with me Iyahen, who is Senior Director, Natural Resources at the Africa Finance Corporation. Osam leads client coverage and transaction origination, in addition to providing technical advisory in deal execution. And joining us virtually is Lawson, President and Chief Executive at 4 Explorations. 4 is listed both on the TSXV in Canada and on the AIM market in London, with Segun identifying and leading acquisitions, financing and JVs with Acacia Mining. I want to thank you so much for joining me this morning, Nere, Osam and Segun. Thank you for being here this morning. Let's start with Nere. Now, a lot has happened in relation to gold. Globally, if we look in Ghana, the central bank is now buying gold to save the city. Zimbabwe recently floated a gold coin as legal tender. And then we look at India, which now has its own gold exchange. Could you speak to some of the definitive developments within the Nigerian industry around the gold market and how this has impacted your operations?
Okay. Yeah, definitely, as you're seeing with the global interests and the financial institutions also looking at gold as something that could help their currency and economy. Nigeria, for us, I think we were leading a bit on this. 2016 through 2019, the central bank has been involved in designing different gold buying programs. And I think they've just been tweaking it so that it meets their satisfaction. But with all of that, the developments there you've seen since, I think I'd say about 2017, there's been a push for us to develop our gold market, trying to develop mines, organize artisanal mining, even more financing as well for gold mining. And now you're also seeing more of what we're doing with the value chain development as well. So I believe that Nigeria also, the story, while it may not be so loud, we also have that same story. The same thing you said about India in the news, we've been in the news, Nigeria, thorough exploration in the news for what they've done with the Segola gold mines, Sanu in the news as well for being distinctive, just like what you're saying Ghana is doing, Zimbabwe, we forgot Tanzania as well. So I think Nigeria is right there lockstep. If we're kinder to ourselves, we are right there with the other countries that are showing bullish interest in gold.
Right, so certainly very exciting times for players and of course investors. Let me move from player to player and we'll come and speak to the financier. Let's go to Segun. Segun, thank you for joining us this morning. Now, we can formally say that Nigeria is a large gold producer with the entry of Segilola Gold's Mine, the country's most advanced gold exploration project under your helm, of course, at 4 Explorations. Could you speak to the intricacies of getting this project and milestone to this point in terms of operational feasibilities in relation to other markets? As we know, you also have a presence in Senegal and Burkina Faso currently.
Me on your show. Good morning from the Segilola mine site itself. Yeah, like you say, the process getting to where we are now has involved requiring significant investment in exploration, understanding geological interpretation, and then taking the project from exploration across various milestones. So initially a preliminary feasibility study, and then getting it to a bankable feasibility study where we had to present the project in a bankable form to our financiers, our key financiers sitting next to you, Mr. Iyahen from Africa Finance Corporation. And unfortunately, as we got financed, the COVID pandemic hit, which, hit everybody in the sector. But what we can say is we were able to, sit alongside our stakeholders and our financiers and successfully construct the project through the pandemic. When we compare what it's like in the Nigerian environment versus the other West African jurisdictions where we operate, we found it very, very enabling. We have a mining act really designed to support you. We have incentives in place, which are very compelling, such as the Pioneer Status Program. We have 100% ownership of our projects, unlike in other jurisdictions where you have a government free carry. And also, I think, most importantly, we have a young, educated population that's got significant transferable skills that we've been able to employ under the tutelage of expats and have been able to implement this project successfully.
All right. Of course, as we know, this is a very exciting project. Nigeria is extremely proud of it. And of course, the AFC is co-developed and invested in this project. Apart from it, being an economically, a big potential economically, as an investor, what other compelling reasons led you to invest in this project?
Well, thank you, Abby, and thank you, Neri, and thank you, Shegun, for all you've done to make us very proud of the accomplishments, what we can do in Nigeria in the gold sector and the mining sector. It's a pleasure to be speaking on behalf of AFC in this regard. The Thor Segulala project has been around for a while. The project anywhere else in the world would have been financed a long time ago. Part of the reason it wasn't financed for a while was really the zip code. Nigeria has not been known as a jurisdiction for mining for a while. And if you look at AFC's mandate, core mandate is to de-risk transactions, to ensure that capital flows into the continent. And what better place to do that in our headquartered country in Nigeria, where we've seen a project that has the highest quality of grade, really one of the highest qualities of grade, led by quality sponsors, and show a demonstration to the rest of the world that Nigeria can indeed become a mining jurisdiction, a jurisdiction where we can do large-scale mining. And so for us, it was really a demonstration project and a way to help the government in terms of FX, diversifying outside of the oil and gas industry into a very critical industry, which for a long time was a key industry. The mining sector was a key industry in Nigeria in the 60s, before the oil came on board. So for us, it was really trying to do two things. One, a demonstration that we can do it in Nigeria, and two, to help and enable to prove the concept that this is a sector that can grow. And we are finding examples following the Thor investment that there are so many other projects that are like the Thor project, and we can then have follow-on investment. So we really look at things as from an ecosystem perspective, prove the concept and then expand.
All right, so there's a lot of promise, it sounds. We're seeing it happen, but there are also some knowledge gaps which we cannot ignore. A very good example, and I'm coming to you, Neri, would be when we look at sensitization around the LBMA-produced gold. How much work would you say is being done around this and in terms of market reception to it and the understanding of this?
Well, I think when you say LBMA is really a term, it's an association. And the association is from London, the London bullion market. And usually that association is really an association for, let's say, hedge funds, central banks, and international financial institutions. They are the ones who deal with gold, who typically that are LBMA. Now, along the pros of LBMA, or should I also say precious metals that also serve as legal tender, say like the British Royal Mint, the Canadian Royal Mint. If you have coins from those mints, they are as good as the currency in that country. Same thing with Rand Refinery as well. So I believe in terms of sensitization, the truth is there is no refinery, there's no gold refinery in Africa. Rand Refinery as an exception, that is an LBMA certified refinery. There's actually very few in the world. So I don't think it's an issue of sensitization per se. It's just an issue of meeting the requirements. You have to be producing a minimum of 20 tons as a refinery per year. You have to be producing at least 20 tons per year consistently for 3 years. I forget the financial capitalization that the refinery has to have. And after that, you need at least 3 already LBMA certified institutions to also recommend you. So all that said, it's going to take a very long time for even Dubai, that you know as a gold destination, there is no LBMA refinery in Dubai. So that just gives you a good idea for what this is. Now, at the same time, look at what happened to Russia during the war. Russia had about 5 LBMA refineries, but because of the economic situation, they got stripped. So you have refineries that have done all that work, right? And they have nothing to do with the war, and suddenly they're stripped of a certification. So LBMA is also political, quite frankly. Technical requirements are more about ISO standards for gold, which here, Standard Organization of Nigeria, we got them to adopt the ISO standards for gold refining. So if it's a technical thing, I believe that Nigeria is there, lockstep, and so are other refineries. But in terms of political and other things that matter, that's where LBMA comes in. Now, that said, for us in Nigeria, what we've done is we are presently swapping some of our gold. Right now, presently, most of the gold that Iyahen Smith produces, aggregates, and mines for LBMA, and that's what we are giving people the opportunity to buy. Because same thing, you have the financial institutions that would prefer to deal with LBMA. We are having an FX situation, and most people would like to be able to buy LBMA gold and know that they don't need to sell to Iyahen Smith, they don't need to sell to anybody. They could go right to London and PTA, medicals, and it's LBMA, and right there, you could transact with it.
All right, awesome. I see you nodding to every word there. Do you have anything to say on that quickly before I move okay, let's move ahead. Segun, I'm coming to you now. So Nigeria's mining industry is at a nascent stage, given a neglect over the course of many years, of course. Let's get your take on the real geological potential within the country and investment appetite. How would you sensitize the global investors better regarding this market if you're already doing so?
I mean, without even exaggerating, Nigeria has significant geological potential. I think the significant potential can be seen, as touched upon by Osam earlier. Just our project here, when you compare us with any of our peer group in West Africa, the sheer quality of the gold we produce, the high grade components of it. But I think most importantly, people have to understand that the geological potential in Nigeria has been underexplored. And that is the reason why there isn't that significant output of mining, whether it's gold, base metals, battery metals. They're all here in abundance. But due to the prospectivity of the oil and gas sector and the focus that's been on the oil and gas sector since the 60s, the mining sector has suffered a lot of neglect. Exploration isn't overnight success. It's a long-term process. Right now, we're extremely excited to see government programs being implemented to assist in exploration, such as the NIMEP program. And I think this will really provide a data set to allow investors to come in and look at what's here. And what we've noticed since we've gone through that experience through exploration to production, we have seen a significant uptick in activity around us. Whether it's local players, local oil and gas players diversifying to mining, whether it's international players coming in, whether it's service providers, for example, drilling companies, which weren't here when we started, are now here in numbers. Other service providers such as labs are here in numbers. So we've definitely seen an uptick in activity over the last 18 months.
All right, without a doubt, there's so much to get through, but it's time for a quick break. And when we return, the discussion around Africa's mining potential, Nigeria's gold market, and solid minerals landscape continues with Neri Emiko, Segun Lawson, and Osam Iyahen. Stay with us. You're watching Business Week, and I have been chatting with Neri Emiko, founder Iyahen Smith, and Sanu Osam Iyahen, who is Senior Director, Natural Resources at the Africa Finance Corporation, and Segun Lawson, who joins us virtually. He is President and Chief Executive at 4 Explorations. All right, Osam, let's come to you now. Of course, investment is the big word now. You're the guy that everyone is chasing. Now, of course, natural resources has been a substantial focus for the AFC across Africa, so that's a very important point. Let's discuss your findings on the continent, the mining sector, and the opportunities and potential, the areas that you've invested in so far.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at the African landscape, before I go down to your question, about 50% of the export value is from the natural resources sector. Yet Africa only has about 5% of the exploration and the development spend globally. I think about 30% or so of the global resources reserves actually exist on the continent, right? So if you look at this statistics and that I've just stated, it clearly shows that there's a significant gap in financing to be able to convert these resources and the reserves into projects. There's statistics that says only 10%, actually only 8% of mining projects actually get developed. In Africa, it's actually even less than that. So therein comes an opportunity in Africa in particular, for an institution that has a balance sheet, that's African funded, to be able to play a leadership role in making sure that this sector is developed and it has the right requisite financing to be able to do so. So I give you all that background to sort of explain our approach. As we look forward in terms of what is happening globally, you see that the critical minerals that are going to be important for clean energy, most of them reside on the continent. 60% of the cobalt globally resides in the Democratic Republic of Congo, about, I believe, 10% of the copper in Zambia, etc., Tanzania, Zimbabwe, etc. So for the AFC, looking forward in terms of how the sector is going to develop and how it's going to impact Africa is particularly important. Do we continue to allow the previous model of export of our products without any beneficiation, without any development of those resources on the continent where you have the value addition, where the most value exists? So for us, we are taking a leadership position in terms of looking at how do we go from just extracting the resources to actually developing the resources, especially in the era of clean energy where we have most of these resources. So it's a very critical aspect of the financing of that value chain that we're looking to be able to tackle. AFC, along with other financiers, sponsored a report which was recently done by Bloomberg, which shows that if you look at the battery mineral value chain, it costs actually 50% less to produce the cathode precursor in a place like the DRC than in China, and it's actually 3 times cheaper. Yes, and it's actually three times cheaper to do that same activity in Zimbabwe and in the DRC and in Zambia. So that just shows you the dislocation in the market. We should be developing the resources on the continent and processing and adding value on the continent. So that's what we're going to be doing going forward, making sure we find a way to make sure that there is maximum value which is extracted on the continent for the benefit of Africa. In terms of your second part of your question, what have we been doing? We've mobilized at least $900 million of capital on the continent in the mining sector. And we've invested in gold in Nigeria, gold in Sierra Leone. We've invested diamonds in Botswana. We've invested in 2 bauxite mines in the Guinea-Conakry. We've invested in potash project in Eritrea. And we've invested in manganese, in the manganese mine in Gabon as well. So we have a very vast expanse of expertise, and again, we're looking to see how do we bring all that expertise and how do we mobilize the requisite funding to benefit countries like Nigeria that haven't had the benefit of a deep financial capacity to develop some of these projects.
Right, sounds like a very robust portfolio, and I'm very sure you're keeping your eyes peeled for more as well. But let's look at structures that help cushion the entire market. Neri, let's talk about the emergence of institutions such as the Lagos Commodities Futures Exchange in relation to your operations, of course. How has the structure impacted your work?
Well, what I would say about what that has done, not indirectly it has, and I'll say in a good way. So we've been in this value chain development, gold, refining, all of that for several years. And we believe that the entrance of Lagos Commodity Future Exchange is just validation of the work that we've been doing. And it also is something that Osam mentioned. We need deeper capital markets. that will come into gold. So the Lagos Commodity Future Exchange now is, they're just echoing really the work that we've been doing and what we've been saying about an opportunity. So we look at it as a plus. Now the difference for us is on that side, they're going to get more maybe investors who are like in the investment arm regulated by the SEC and all of that. We are retail. So we are actually a firm that's involved in mining, trading, and now this retail. So we are dealing with the CBN. So the central bank is our regulator and our Ministry of Mines and Steel. Now the Lagos Commodity Future Exchange, they are also dealing with SEC. So there are differences, I mean, at least in terms of financial institutions and our requirements for what we can do. So our case is very much you buy gold physically, you take the gold. We also had coins. We still have our own coins, like they do the coins. They released our coin in 2020 during the lockdown. And we even have one here from Burkina Faso. But anyway, the point is, with all of that, we are strictly staying on the retail side of it. But either way, we think it's great that the Lagos Commodity Future Exchange has come in. It's bringing more attention to the sector. It's deepening the capital market, and it's just validation.
All right, that's good to hear. There's some sort of cohesion there, or at least a lot more than cohesion I'll expect.
For the sector, yes, we need the sector to develop.
That's very important. But of course, we can't proceed with this conversation without talking about a very important part. And Segun, this is coming to you. I want to talk about artisanal mining in the country. When it comes to the Segun, what work is being done in this regard? As we know, between 2018 and 2019, we were producing between 1 or 2 tons of gold a month artisanally in Nigeria, as insecurity in parts like Zamfara led to supply taking a hit, and we began to see more artisanal mining in the south. Now, the Nigerian government is looking to bring some more artisanal miners into the fold. Are you in support of this, and why? We have less than 2 minutes left to go, please.
Okay, look, I'll be very fast. I'll do my best. We're not involved at all in artisanal mining. Obviously, we are a large-scale mine, and the advantage of being a large-scale mine is all our mining is very formalized, and we can account for every ounce of gold we produce. I believe in this calendar year, we've paid over 1 billion naira in royalties to the federal government as well. I think what I have seen with the Ministry of Mines and representing the federal government is trying to formalize this artisanal sector, which will increase the revenue going to the federal government. And when I say formalize, that means identification of people working in the sector, having minimum standards of work which they adhere to, and also accountability for the gold produced. Accountability in terms of health and safety, in terms of the environment, and also in terms of royalty being paid to the government. I think if they can get this right, it's going to be a huge benefit for Nigeria. Currently, as the situation is, it's fragmented, it's not formal, and it's almost not a responsible way to mine. So we very much look forward to seeing the government formalizing this sector, and any part we can play to assist, we'll be more than glad to.
All right, Segun, accountability and responsibility. But let me get to Nere very quickly, because I know you've done some work in that artisanal mining. If you can just chip in very quickly before we call it over.
I think just like Segun said, it's more about formalizing. How do we formalize? How do we bring them into the value chain? Value addition. I think the best way, and which is what we found, is that the artisanal miners should work with mines. So usually, let's say like a Thor exploration, they have a large-scale mine, they have a little portion of their site, of the license, that is not worth all the, should we say, maybe investment of the equipment to mine. Then you could allow maybe some manual, small-scale mining there. So as far as there's an integration with everything else, I think it's perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Of course, we have so much to talk about, which unfortunately we're unable to cover today. But I want to thank you so much, Osam, Iyahen, Nere, Emiko, and Segun Lawson for joining me this morning. We have now come to the end of today's edition of Business Week. I am Abby Owolawi. Thank you for staying with us, and goodbye.